Hi everyone, I am Neepa and this is Santoshi, Ronil, and Sue, and we are presenting to you CliniCall, a real-time visualization device for patients and data while away, what we like to call the virtual attending. So the hospital can be an incredibly busy environment. So what does this mean? Communication is all the more important. Communication between physicians and patients, as well as communication within physicians themselves. So communication between physicians in practice is found to be inefficient and decentralized. One study showed that 40% of healthcare providers find it difficult to communicate with one another. This is often due to fragmented communication channels. Take this phone, for instance. This is Dr. Jansen. While he's on call at home, he's receiving messages from his resident, Dr. Reddy, in the hospital. She's asking him if he's available for a call in 5 minutes. Simultaneously, she's sending him a message about a diagnostic reading that she needs help interpreting. While he's trying to navigate how to respond to these messages, he gets a message from his wife, asking him to pick up the kids at 4 p.m. So while he's trying to figure out how to navigate all these messages and respond, what does that mean? That's a time delay in treating the patients. Every minute that he spends responding to these messages and figuring out how to respond is a minute spent away from the patients. At the same time, there's a lack of visual context. For Dr. Jansen at home, he's not able to see the mental, physical, and emotional state of the patient, many factors that are crucial to patient care. So at the end of the day, this leads to confusion for all parties involved. This is the physician at home, the physician in the hospital, as well as the patient in the patient room. Dr. Jansen, our clinical mentor, said that he receives an average of 15 notifications per night on call, costing him upwards of 2 hours every night while he's on call because of messaging through text, phone calls, but not a video capability.
So introducing our device, CliniCall, a all-in-one audio and visual communication device between residents in the hospital and physicians at home and their mentors. Some key components of our device is that there is a clear and easy push button on the device that leads to immediate video streaming and audio streaming to the physician at home. It interfaces with an application that we have created that is accessible and secure. And the device is portable and compatible, so it doesn't distract mainly from the patient experience, which is our main key point. Some of the key features that we want to emphasize in our device is first, simplicity. So the device should have less than 4 parts that are clearly labeled so that the physician at the patient room can easily access the device. The performance of the device should last about 9 hours, and while the device isn't being used, it's being charged, and should be about an hour charging time. The device is also cost-effective. We aim to use very cost-effective materials that will lead to about $50 production costs, so that's easily implemented in a variety of different hospital systems. The physical components of the device are that it's small and portable, about 1 by 1 by 3 inches, and weighs about the same size as sunglasses. In terms of privacy, our device and our application will be both HIPAA compliant, and there will be a patient and guardian waiver that needs to be signed before the device is being used in the patient room. The device is also compatible so that it's adjustable for every physician that it's used for.
Moving on, I'll be talking about the components of CliniCall that make it what it is. Starting off with the hardware, CliniCall consists of a push button, a camera module, a power bank which also functions as an on-off switch, and a microphone and speaker system in the form of headphones. Over on the left, in the top left, you can see our final encasement of CliniCall with the green square above the C representing a more accessible version of our push button. In the bottom left, you can see Neepa currently wearing our device, and just to orient you all, the green square next to Neepa's eye is our camera module. Moving on to our software components, throughout our proof of concept and minimum viable products last semester, we really emphasized trying to create this live stream. We wanted to live stream audio and video directly from our device to a clinician at home. However, after successfully implementing this live stream, we realized 2 main flaws with this approach. The first was that the audio and video were incredibly laggy and did not sync at all. The second issue is that the live stream only provided one-way communication when we really needed a system that allowed for 2-way communication between the resident at the hospital and the clinician at home. After doing some more research into the issue, we found Jitsi. Jitsi is a video conferencing system very similar to Zoom. However, unlike Zoom, Jitsi is open source. This means that it was very easy to integrate into our existing application. Furthermore, Jitsi provides HD audio and video and is already HIPAA compliant. Moving on to the third part of CliniCall, our application, we started in October with a robust Figma prototype containing many features such as patient history, patient demographics, as well as video call functionality. After talking to Dr. Jansen, he wanted us to simplify the application to just the core components of CliniCall, which is the video stream, which is the video live stream. So for our minimum viable product, we created a application that was compatible with our live stream. In the recent months, after switching to Jitsi, we once again pivoted from this application to a more simplified version of our application that integrated directly with Jitsi's API. And playing this video of our application, you can see that a clinician at home is able to adjust meeting settings and join a meeting as when needed. So just going through, adjusting the settings, connecting to a meeting. You can see that is Dr. Jansen's room, and all of the same functionality that you would expect to see in a video conferencing system still exists. Moving on to a live demo of our application. I will let the video play.
So this is just me as a resident in the hospital. So I'm walking through, and at this point, I'm going to press the button and call Dr. Synghal at home, and he's going to receive a message on his phone that says that he's received a text that someone's calling him, and he's able to log on to the application, and from there, he'll be able to see exactly what I'm seeing from my point of view. So now I'm walking around in the environment, and he can see as I'm walking what I'm seeing from my point of view. And ultimately here, I'm going to pause at a fridge, and he's going to be able to see a fridge from his phone.
Now getting into our testing results. Firstly, for the video stream quality, we tested this over a long range, and we were able to produce a sustained HD resolution of 1280 x 720. Occasionally, this fluctuated between an HD and SD resolution depending on the Wi-Fi connection. Secondly, for the Jitsi Meet connection time, we looked at the time it took for the app to connect to the Jitsi Meet, which averaged at less than 5 seconds for all of the trials that we conducted. For the device attachment, we asked our participants to wear our device and go about their daily lives for 15-minute intervals, which resulted in them all reporting that they experienced comfort and a secure device attachment with their device. We then conducted usability surveys with 20 participants, including Penn students as well as CHOP physicians, where 91% of our users were satisfied overall with our product and app. 93% of our users found our app very easy to use, and 85% of our users reported that they would recommend our product highly to colleagues, friends, and family. One of our participants mentioned that they could actually visualize CliniCall setting a new visual standard for virtual physician communication.
So now just moving on to some of our next steps and final steps with our product. We first want to conduct rigorous clinical testing with the residents and physicians. So this is to make sure that our device is tailored to our users, the residents in the hospital, as well as the physicians at home. Then we really want to focus on improving the clarity of our device. One of the biggest feedbacks from our usability surveys was that some of the audio and video could be even more clear. So this means that we can pair it with different headphones as well as getting a more improved camera. Next, we want to reduce the device size. This is probably the most important part of our device that we want to keep updating, because the lighter and smaller it is, the easier it is for the resident at home, the resident in the hospital to wear it, as well as the more comfortable that it will be for them. And lastly, once we improve all of these little device features, we want to implement our device within CHOP so that it can serve as a new standard for using video to communicate within physicians in the hospital and physicians at home. And with that, we will take any questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys. Excellent presentation. It was really clear. It was very, great to understand everything that your design process and all the things that you've done. So my question is, in the world of where everybody involved here is likely going to have a $1,000 smartphone on their person with a camera and all the infrastructure for video sharing and audio, what is the sort of killer feature of CliniCall that sort of justifies the additional hardware and the additional software efforts that go into this? And if the answer is HIPAA compliance, is that enough?
I think more so than HIPAA compliance is the portability feature. I think the problem that we found, especially talking with our clinical mentor, is when you have a phone that you're carrying around and using FaceTime or things like that, it's very difficult to hold the phone while also attending to the patient and carrying it around. And I know in some way we could have like some form of attachment to a phone on like your face or like chest or something like that, but I think the thing that we want to pursue with CliniCall is having it small enough and lightweight enough that it's not weighing you down if you were to attach it to your like forehead with a headband. So I think that's our main feature, is adding those HIPAA compliant features with having a portable device.
I can just try to project here. So you mentioned at the beginning that you had 15. Okay. You mentioned at the beginning that the attending would get 15 messages per hour while on a night shift or something like that. Do you have an idea of how often a resident in the hospital would need to call in with video for support or advice from an attending at home?
Yeah, I think it's not as upwards as 15, but there's many instances, probably around 5, as what we got from talking to our attending and his fellow residents that he communicates with. There might be around 5 like times where when they're calling using phone call, it would be even more beneficial to have the video capability in addition to it. I think that was the main point.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you had 20 people test out the device and rate it on comfort and quality and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit more about who they were and if they had any specific tasks they were assigned to do with the device?
Yeah, so we wanted to keep it simple at first when we were doing our at-home testing. So for the first few participants, we did it between ourselves and friends and family in the area. So we mainly, for movement and testing and comfort testing, we mainly had them climb up and down stairs, move around a room, sort of bend down, bend forward like you would in a patient room if you're picking up something, if you're reaching above a cabinet to get something or something like that. So we just had some set tasks that we could kind of standardized so that if someone was testing it not in the same place as we usually test it, that they could do the same thing. And then moving on to like clinicians and residents, we did reach out to a few and had them like walk around like the main lobby and like the hospital area and stuff like that to emulate that same environment. When we move forward for like rigorous clinical testing, we'd hope to have it in the actual patient room, but we weren't able to get like the permissions for that just yet. But
great presentation, by the way, and I think super interesting space that you guys chose, especially because, the whole notion of having care teams is becoming much more prevalent. My question for you is kind of related to the first question. Have you guys quantified any outcome difference or, impact difference between using CliniCall, for example, an existing solution, or how might you think about quantifying some of that impact?
I think currently, as of today, what we've done is more usability surveys and feedback-oriented things, and that we quantified in terms of like a scale of how, like out of 10, how comfortable they feel using the device and things like that. But I think moving forward, definitely in terms of audio quality and video quality, those are good quantification measures to make sure it's living up to the standard of FaceTime or something that exists on a phone, as well as the time that they actually end up using it. So I think a good way to measure that will be how often they find themselves using this device, and if they were to use a phone, how often they would find themselves using that phone, and comparing the two to make sure that they're actually using the device if it is to be implemented.
I was wondering if you had talked to any hospital administrators or other people in charge of like product adoption within the hospital systems beyond just residents and doctors.
yeah, so me and Ronil actually have experience with working in one of our classes with CHOP and implementing like a device for like fall systems, like for children falling in the hospital and how to like record that and stuff like that. And we did talk to them at that point about like, if we were to implement this device that we created, how would we go about that? There are a lot of different processes that we have to take into account. I think the first thing is getting approved for clinical testing and then having that tested within the hospital system and within the patient rooms. I'm not completely sure of the numbers that or how many clinical tests we have to do, but I think that's the first main step before we actually like apply within the hospital administration and get the product like kind of implemented within the system. But I think firstly we have to go through the clinical testing and stuff like that. Yeah.
that's all the time we have now for